I'm going to tell you about the signature foods you can try in Washington, D.C. Hello, my name is Rob. I'm a tour guide and the founder of TripHacks DC Tours. On this channel, you will find my best tips, tricks, and hacks for exploring Washington, D.C. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell notification icon so that you don't miss anything in the future. And after you're done watching TripHacks DC videos, head on over to triphacksdc.com for even more. One of the best things about traveling to a new city is trying out the signature foods. When you go to Philadelphia, you eat cheesesteak. In Chicago, deep dish pizza. In Boston, it's clam chowder. But what is it in Washington, D.C.? That's a tricky question to answer because there isn't one single defining food like there are in those other cities. But there are several foods that are special to our area, and I'm going to tell you what they are. And I want to know, which of these foods have you tried, and how did you like it? Or if you haven't tried any of them yet, which are you most excited to try when you visit Washington, D.C.? Leave a comment down there after the video and let me know. Otherwise, let's get started. The first signature dish is the half smoke. A half smoke, simply put, is a sausage served on a bun. The reason it's called a half smoke is a bit of an urban legend. I think that most people would say that it got its name because it's a sausage made of half beef and half pork. Other people say that it got its name because it's often cut in half before it's cooked. Regardless, it's one of my personal favorites. Now, the most famous place to go for a half smoke is Ben's Chili Bowl on U Street Northwest. The original Ben's has a ton of history, and I've talked about it in a few previous videos. Ben's is also unique because they don't just serve the sausage, but they serve it with chili. But you don't have to go to Ben's. You can get half smokes at a lot of different places. Where I personally go for half smokes is to the butcher's at the Eastern Market. Then I go over to the bakery at the Eastern Market and get fresh sausage rolls. I always go for the hot half smoke. I bring it home and cook it myself. Ideally outdoors on the grill, but oftentimes inside as well. And no, if you're curious, I do not cut mine in half first. The second signature food is Ethiopian food. I love Ethiopian food. If you've never tried Ethiopian and you're willing to be a little bit adventurous, then this is absolutely a must-eat when you visit DC. Ethiopian food has unique ties to Washington, DC, because in the 1970s and 1980s, there was a civil war in Ethiopia. I'm not going to go into the details of the history, but the result was that many Ethiopians fled the country, and many who sought refuge here in the US wound up here in Washington, D.C. Ethiopian food is especially unique because Ethiopia is one of the only countries in Africa that preserved its sovereignty during the period of European colonial rule and doesn't have European influences, the same way that many modern African foods do. The first time you go to an Ethiopian restaurant, I highly recommend getting a sampler platter. This will give you a chance to try several different meats and vegetables all served on top of injera, the Ethiopian flatbread. Injera is especially cool because you use it to scoop up the components of your meal. If you have kids in your family, do not worry. Ethiopian restaurants tend to be extremely family friendly with very relaxed atmospheres. And if you're curious, Marcus Samuelsson, the celebrity chef, did an entire episode about Washington, D.C.'s Ethiopian food culture on his show on PBS, which I will link to in the description if you want to check it out. The third signature food is Mumbo sauce. Okay, Mumbo sauce isn't really a food so much as it is a condiment, literally a sauce. Now the signature DC dish is chicken wings with Mumbo sauce. And if you're going to eat it the way that it's traditionally eaten, you need to get these wings from a Chinese carryout restaurant with either fried rice or French fries on the side. Okay, now I know what you might be thinking. Chicken wings with French fries from a Chinese restaurant? At first, it does sound like a bit of an odd combo, and definitely not very Chinese. The deal is that Mumbo sauce has deep roots in Washington, D.C.'s African American community. For a significant portion of modern history, D.C. was nicknamed Chocolate City because of the majority African American population. Chinese restaurants generally just wanted to serve what people wanted, rather than to try to be authentic Chinese in whatever way. And in many cases, what people wanted were chicken wings. And Mumbo sauce is the sauce that these Chinese restaurants created to serve with them. And the cool thing is that every restaurant had their own recipe. So it's not like Heinz ketchup, where it tastes exactly the same no matter where in the world you're eating it. Every Mumbo sauce is a little different, and locals definitely have their favorites. If you're interested in mumbo sauce, there is a great video on the First We Feast YouTube channel that goes into great depth on this DC food subculture. So check out the description for a link to that. The next food on the list is pupusas. Pupusas are similar to Ethiopian food in that they're not technically native to DC. Rather, they are the national dish of El Salvador. Now, there are about 1.5 million Salvadorian Americans, but they are not equally dispersed across the country. Most of them live either in Los Angeles, California, or right here in Washington, D.C. In fact, Washington, D.C. is the only metro area in the U.S. where Salvadorians are the majority of the Hispanic population. So in your travels around the U.S., you'll find great Cuban food in some cities, great Mexican food in others, and here in DC, it's great Salvadorian food. Pupusas are a type of flatbread that you use to pick up meats, beans, cheeses, and all kinds of other delicious items. If you've never had one before, then I highly recommend you give it a try. The next food for the list is called jumbo slice pizza. This is one that I was admittedly reluctant to add to this list because I don't like jumbo slice pizza and I don't think it's worth seeking out. Jumbo slice is literally just a giant slice of pizza. It's typically considered a drunk food, and jumbo slice restaurants are concentrated in areas with a lot of bars. The reason it's considered a DC food is because legend is it was invented here. As the story goes, a pizza parlor in the Adams Morgan neighborhood had a customer come in one evening, not exactly sober, and this customer requested an outrageously large slice of pizza, and for whatever reason, the owner accommodated him. Then, word got out, and this became a staple among the late night crowd. Jumbo Slice mostly maintained a small cult following for a while, until Instagram gave it a second wind. Because, holding up a slice of pizza that's bigger than your head makes for quite a gram. I think it's a bit silly, but I'm also not an Instagram influencer. And the last food on the list is crab and/or seafood. This is another one that's tough for me to put on the list, because to me, these foods belong to Maryland. Maryland is our neighbor, of course, but the thing is, when I think of crabs or Chesapeake oysters, I think of Annapolis, Maryland. Now, to be honest, I really do love oysters. Whenever I go to Old Ebbitt Grill, one of DC's most famous restaurants, I always get the oysters. And when you visit the fish market at the wharf, you can buy crabs live, have them steamed right in front of you, and then covered in Old Bay seasoning, which is considered a bit of a local treat. So it may be a Maryland food, but one that you can definitely experience in a pretty unique way here in DC. And hey, if you made it this far, then I highly recommend another Trip Hacks DC video. So go ahead and click or tap right over here to watch another one. And if you're coming to DC and interested in signing up for a Trip Hacks DC guided tour, you can click or tap on the Capitol Dome on the left side of my head. That'll send you right over to triphacksdc.com where you can see all of the tours that we offer. Enjoy your trip!